Jen Psaki, spokesperson. Daily press briefing. Washington, D.C. August 21st, 2013. Share on Facebook, share on Twitter, share index for today's briefing. Egypt. Determining our relationship with Egypt. Reviewing assistance working with EU and other counterparts. Call for inclusive political process. Mubarak. Egyptians should not be arbitrarily arrested and bribed. Syria. General Dempsey's letter. Aid to the moderate opposition. Chemical weapons. UN investigative team meeting with Russia. Geneva to Australia. Death of Australian citizen. Department. Bradley Manning verdict. Israel-Palestinian territories. Talks. Ambassador index role. Transcript. 1:34 p.m. EDT. MS. PSAKI. Hi, everyone. Thanks for your patience. So I have one item at the top. I have a special guest here today. My dad is sitting in the back. I've informed him he cannot ask any questions at the briefing, so if he doesn't abide by that, you all have free rein to do whatever you like. But with that, I know there's a lot going on in the world, so let's start with what's on your minds. Question. Can we start with Egypt? MS. PSAKI. We certainly can. Question. Obviously, the administration is working to rethink its relationship and aid and all. MS. PSAKI. Question. Can you give us any kind of background information on that? What is the object of the game? Is the object of the game to figure out what the US can do to influence the Egyptian military government? Is it more of a long-term strategy approach? Is it aid only? Is it? MS. PSAKI. All of the above. But let me try to answer your question, and if not, you can ask more, of course. Question. And also, it seems as if there are different players in the administration that have different ideas about this. And so how deep is the discord? MS. PSAKI. Well, I certainly am not going to get into anything like that from the podium or anywhere else. I can tell you that the president welcomes all opinions and all views. And with an issue as important and as vital as this, I'm sure they're having a debate about what steps should be taken moving forward. As you know, the president and his national security team met yesterday, as they have regular meetings. They discussed Egypt. Of course, our broad goal here is to determine our relationship moving forward. That includes aid, of course. That's the issue that many people are very interested in, all of you. But there are many, of course, implications of that, and there are many factors in that. We've talked about this a bit, but I think given your question, it's worth mentioning that we have seen our aid to Egypt as something that is vital for national security purposes, our own national security purposes, for regional stability. We believe that the Egyptian people can return to or can venture to a long-term, sustainable democracy, and path toward that. And there are several reasons why we have provided aid in the past, including safe passage through the Suez Canal, things that we're worried about security-wise in terms of specifics, security in the Sinai, security on the Gaza border, the ability to fly over Egyptian airspace. But as we've said many times, obviously, when hundreds of civilians are being killed, as they were last week, you can continue with business as usual. We've taken steps that we've told all of you about. The F-16s a couple of weeks ago, the decision on Bright Star. But the question moving forward is, what is our relationship going to be? What steps should we or shouldn't we take? And that's a policy discussion that's ongoing. So I don't have any readouts of that, but that's the goal. Question. Are there more meetings planned or is this going to be something to figure out a short-term answer or more of a long-term strategy? MS. PSAKI. Well, certainly, when you're discussing an issue as important as our strategic relationship with Egypt, you're talking about both. You're talking about the events that happened last week, the events that have happened over the last 6 weeks, but you're also talking about what's in our long-term interests. So there are lots of, that's why it's such a complicated situation and certainly a complicated conversation. Question. So how did the meeting go? Was there anything that came out of the meeting? And are we having more meetings? MS. PSAKI. There are no announcements coming out of the meeting. Conversations are obviously ongoing. I don't have any other meetings to read out for you now. But I can assure you that the Secretary speaks regularly with, of course, his counterparts over there. And if there's a need to call another meeting, they will certainly do that. Question. Do you know? But if I were to follow. Question. I'm wondering, how long is it going to take for this review to take place? Or is this one of those indefinite reviews? MS. PSAKI. Well, it certainly is not an indefinite review, given that infers that it's going to take forever. But obviously, there are a number of components being discussed. If it were an easy answer, there would have been an easy decision made. But I outlined many of the components there, and just to reiterate, certainly, the fact that we have significant national security interests, that we are focused on the unique role that Egypt plays in regional stability, that we do want to take whatever the appropriate steps are from the outside to make sure the Egyptian people have the best path forward, and for all the security reasons I outlined, those are all certainly part of any discussion. Question. Just to follow up what Marie was saying yesterday, we're trying to figure out what is your estimate for the tiny part of money she was referring to. So how big is the tiny part? MS. PSAKI. I do not have a public number to share with all of you. I would just, if we can take a step back for just a moment, clearly, our view of our assistance and the circumstances on the ground are different than they were in June and May and a year ago. That certainly impacts how we're looking at this. Everything Marie said yesterday and what I said Monday still stands. There's not a blanket hold or a hold on assistance, but that review is continuing where applicable. So, but I don't have a public number. We are venturing to get you all kind of a snapshot to give you a better sense of the breakdown, and certainly do want to provide as much information as possible. But as I'm sure you all know, given the complicated process, sometimes the questions that seem simple don't always have easy answers. Question, but Jen. Question, Jen, can I follow up on the meeting real quick? MS, PSAKI, sure. Question, can I just follow up on that? I don't want to dominate, but MS, PSAKI, no, go ahead. Question, I mean, this big meeting was called yesterday. MS, PSAKI, Question, and then, okay, gosh, the meeting's over. Well, now what is everybody doing? MS, PSAKI, well, there weren't any announcements. All I was conveying, Deb, is there are no announcements to make out of the meeting. Obviously, there was a discussion about this and about our relationship with Egypt. The secretary participated via video conference, as did members of the national security team were, of course, meeting. But there's no announcements to make. Question, so what, did they all get homework and? MS, PSAKI, the discussion will be ongoing. Question, they all got homework too. MS, PSAKI, often there's homework. Often it's determining when to talk next or who should talk next. I just don't have anything further to read out from the meeting last night. Question, but? Question, how long did it last? MS, PSAKI, I don't have any kind of specific process answers on that sort of thing. My friends over at the White House may have more specifics. Question, would you dismiss the idea that the administration is in a quandary about what to do? MS, PSAKI, I would dismiss that idea, because I think it oversimplifies the challenge of the situation on the ground, which is that we clearly have had a decades-long strategic relationship with Egypt, through many ups and downs, as we all can recall. But the events of last week, the events of the last 6 weeks, certainly do impact as we look to evaluate our relationship moving forward. One other piece I'll just, process-wise, add to what I said earlier about the meeting is oftentimes this is an opportunity, these meetings, to discuss with various members of the national security team, including the secretary, are hearing from their counterparts around the world, what discussions are underway, what decisions have been made by other countries. That's not the entire discussion. They're discussing aid as well, but there are a range of issues that there's an opportunity to discuss when you're meeting in person. Question, so is that? Question, so Jen. Question, is that meeting like a brainstorming session to really exchange ideas? Is that what it is? MS, PSAKI, I wouldn't. Question, and not to make a decision? MS, PSAKI, no, said, sometimes. I think I've made clear here, and I don't even think that I need to make clear how complicated the situation is on the ground and all the different variables. I don't think anybody around the world or here in the United States would want the president and his team to rush to a decision when there's still discussions ongoing. And when there's an announcement to be made, we'll make an announcement. Question, but this has been going on since the 3rd of July. I mean, it's been a long time in the making, hasn't it? MS, PSAKI, well, said, I think we all know that events on the ground, the events last week, the hundreds of civilians who were killed last week, certainly impact the discussion and impact the review of the conversation about our relationship moving forward. Question, and finally, you keep saying that business can't be as usual, but in fact, the Egyptians are behaving as if business goes on unusual, or at least they are not deterred. Listening to Beblawi, listening to Nabil Fahmy, who was very close and a friend of America, I was listening to him today and so on. They're comfortable in what they're doing, they don't seem to be deterred, and in fact, they're turning their onus on you. MS, PSAKI, well, said, what I was referring to was the fact that there have been meetings to discuss our relationship. Those have been impacted by the events of the last week. And clearly, what happens on the ground matters, and that's part of what we look at and what we evaluate. Question, going back to Leslie's question about a timeline. MS, PSAKI, Question, and the $585 million that hasn't been put into the trust yet. MS, PSAKI, Question, the end of the fiscal year is just over a little bit of a month away. MS, PSAKI, Question, is that not a timeline? Do you not need to make a decision before September 30th? MS, PSAKI, well, certainly, the end of the fiscal year is, of course, a relevant date, but I don't have a prediction of when money will be obligated. I think the important point here, and I said this on Monday, is that there have been many instances in the past where money has been obligated in different tranches, so that's not an uncommon step. I understand why everybody is focused on it, but that's not an uncommon occurrence. Question, so it could be obligated after the end of the fiscal year, after September 30th? MS, PSAKI, I'd have to double check on that for you, but obviously, we have a good amount of time between now and September 30th. Question, Just to follow up, earlier you said that you are looking at what your partners are also doing. The EU is meeting on the same issue today. MS. PSAKI. Question. And is also doing a review. Would that influence anything what the US does? A coordinated effort to put pressure on the Egyptians is always better than just one. MS. PSAKI. Well, certainly we have been working closely with our counterparts, including High Representative Ashton, and there have been joint statements that have been issued related to Egypt over the past couple of weeks. And the Secretary speaks with her on a regular basis. Every country is going to make their own decisions. We're undergoing our own review, just as the EU has and will. And part of that is certainly discussing conversations with counterparts and what other steps are being taken. But just like in any foreign policy issue, every country is going to make their own decision, and there are a range of factors that go into that. Question. Yes, ma'am. Question. Change the subject. Question. Go to Syria. Question. Syria. Question. No. MS. PSAKI. Egypt. Question. Yes. MS. PSAKI. Okay. One more on Egypt. Question. 2 more. MS. PSAKI. 2 more on Egypt. Okay. Question. 3. MS. PSAKI. 3. All right. Go ahead. Laughter. Question. Off mic. MS. PSAKI. 7. Go ahead. Question. You mentioned the expression what happens on the ground, and definitely what happens in the ground every day is changing. MS. PSAKI. Question. So based on that, the things are coming out that almost we can say now there are new realities on the ground, which is less violence but more absence of Muslim Brotherhood, for example. And it was one of the demands that, starting from Secretary Kerry and before that Deputy Secretary Burns, to be inclusive and all this, and the President mentioned about this. How do you see the practicality or the reality of something like this happening while all this leadership are now even not present on the ground? MS. PSAKI. So let me see if I understand your question. Are you asking because there are some people who are no longer in place in the question? Because you push or you ask for or you put something on the tables, including, of course, the release of the president and other people. MS. PSAKI.